both do. We go on and on and on and on and on and sweeter than Ben and Jerry.
It's difficult, because
and we blew a little something. It was summer, whatever.
Do you still remember Q-Tip? The brilliant mind behind the rise of Kanye and P. Diddy, the one producers lovingly called the compass of music. He was the first architect who turned hip-hop into a legitimate American art form and the heartbeat of the entire A-Tribe called Quest. But here comes the shock that makes everyone shudder. The very quote that lifted him to the top became the sentence that destroyed his entire career. A backstage altercation made him lose a crucial role to Tupac. Colleagues turned their backs. A star who once reached the peak suddenly slipped into a deep abyss. What pushed Q-Tip into this downfall? Who dragged him into hell? Do not blink. The truth is about to be exposed. Let's begin. Right now. 1. A black child born in a cold and ruthless street. Q-Tip's real name is Jonathan William Davis, born on April 10, 1970 in Harlem. From a very young age, he started life on a path very different from most rappers of the 90s. While many grew up surrounded by poverty and chaos, Jonathan was raised in a warm family with enough love and support for a child to believe the world still had order. The nickname Q-Tip appeared during his elementary school years, when his friends teased him for being skinny like a cotton swab. He once hated that name, but fate shifted when Africa Bambaataa heard it and decided to give it an entirely new meaning: Queens the Abstract. A name that once embarrassed him became a mark of the creative identity the world would later recognize. Jonathan's family had two defining pillars. His father was not an ordinary man. Jonathan Davis II. His father came from the Caribbean island of Montserrat. Yes, he was an immigrant, but one with a fierce pride in his black roots, a pride he passed down to his son. His mother, a strong woman from Alabama, was the grounding force of the family. She managed the household finances and served as the emotional wall that made Jonathan feel protected. Q-Tip was not just a product of a multicultural environment. From childhood, he was immersed in music. His father was a jazz lover who owned an incredibly valuable record collection. And as you can guess, young Jonathan grew up with that music. Every spin, every note shaped how he saw the world. And of course, jazz became inseparable. You cannot talk about Q-Tip's childhood without mentioning Malik Taylor, Phife Dawg, who would become his partner in their hip-hop crime. The two boys met, Young went to school together, talked endlessly about pioneering rappers, and played with their first rhymes inside Phife's grandmother's home. A woman so strict and so in love with music that her living room became the first rap headquarters of their lives. At 12, he handled turntables like a 20-year-old veteran and made beats with a cassette machine like a real technician. Imagine being 12 and already impressive enough to make adults speechless. That is real talent. But when Jonathan was 16, life struck him with his first tragedy. His father died suddenly. No final message, no last moment to say he still needed him. A funeral closed the chapter of a childhood that had been peaceful. And Jonathan became a boy without a father at the exact time he needed guidance most. That tragedy changed him completely. He smiled less, talked less, and was forced to grow up quickly to become the only man in the house helping his mother and sister through the darkest period. The sense of safety his father built over 16 years vanished in a single afternoon. That enormous void pushed Jonathan deeper into music. Music became the safe space where he processed his grief. 2. Stepping into Hollywood and the dark side of fame. But do not forget, Q-Tip was still a student. And like any true music lover, he did not let school stop his dreams. He studied at Murray Burgum High School in Manhattan, where Q-Tip met the two people who opened the door that would define his entire life. They were Michael Small, who would later become Mike G, and Nathaniel Hall, who would later become Africa Baby Bam of Jungle Brothers. They were not just classmates. They were the first to see Q-Tip not as an ordinary black kid, but as a soul who could hear the world with different ears. They pulled him into the Native Tongues Collective, the birthplace of positive, intellectual, love-filled hip-hop with a tight sense of community. And that was the moment everything began to shift. Within Native Tongues, Q-Tip did not just fit in, he bloomed. He became the abstract, the mind behind samples smooth as cigarette smoke drum patterns full of space, and verses that made listeners not only nod their heads, But sit down and think. Not long after Phife Dawg joined, and a tribe called Quest was born. Q-Tip. Phife Dawg, Ali Shaheed Muhammad, and Jerobi White did not want to be kings of any neighborhood. They wanted to be architects of sound, the ones who brought jazz, soul, and funk back into the minds of black kids drowning in violence. Then they created Can I Kick It? Electric Relaxation Award Tour. Songs that were not only hits, but reminders that hip-hop could be beautiful, intellectual, and healing. Then came the Low End Theory, the masterpiece that turned Tribe into legends. Q-Tip did something no one had dared to do. He invited jazz bass legend Ron Carter to play live over a hip-hop beat. That was not just music, that was a declaration. The album was later archived permanently by the Library of Congress for its cultural value. But things were not all bright. The group slowly fell apart. In 1998, Q-Tip's studio burned down, destroying nearly 20,000 vinyl records and unreleased tracks. This delayed their final album, The Love Movement. In 1999, his first solo album, Amplified, was released, turning him into a mainstream star with the hit Vivrant Thing, a track that climbed the Billboard charts, even though old fans said he had lost his essence. But it proved one thing. Q-Tip did not just know how to make refined music, he knew how to make music that sold. And then the Renaissance in 2008 marked the triumphant return of a grown man, a Q-Tip who blended classic jazz rap with the wisdom of middle age. The album was nominated for a Grammy for Best Rap Album. Money, fame, career. Everything came to him like a kite catching the perfect wind. But the truth is, Q-Tip could have flown even higher. He could have become an A-list movie star alongside Janet Jackson if he had not become a stand-in puppet for his own best friend. 3 Q-Tip the Fall Guy. Sounds unbelievable, right? But it is the bitterest truth of his career, all starting from a twisted misunderstanding. In 1993, when Q-Tip was still active under a tribe called Quest at their peak, they released the hit Jazz We've Got, a song that became the anthem of jazz rap, pushing the entire album to platinum certification. But hidden in that smooth melody was one short rap line with explosive consequences. Strictly hardcore tracks, not a new jack swing. This was Phife Dawg's line. A light jab, but it struck the heart of a musical empire. Dominating at the time, New Jack Swing, led by the genius Teddy Riley. Rex in Effect, a group backed by Teddy Riley, which included Markel Riley. Teddy's younger brother saw that line as a direct insult to their honor, their style, and their livelihood. But instead of aiming at Phife, who said the line, they targeted Q-Tip because he was too prominent, too recognizable, too tied to Tribe's image. In the eyes of those angered, Q-Tip was the one responsible. The disaster erupted outside the Apollo Theater, or a major New York venue hosting a Run DMC show. Q-Tip stepped out the back door. No security, unprepared, not imagining he would become the target of someone's rage. Q-Tip always believed in talking things out. He thought he could simply explain that was Phife's line, not mine, and everything would calm down. But he never had the chance to finish the sentence. A figure rushed from the side and delivered a sucker punch straight into his face. No warning, no argument, no time to react. And before he could recover, more punches followed. It was a sudden, coordinated, brutal attack that gave Q-Tip no chance to defend himself. When he was finally pulled out of the beatdown, his left eye was swollen, bruised, throbbing so badly he could not open it. Doctors suspected retinal damage, possibly long-term vision issues. And right at that moment, the video shoot for Hot Sex was scheduled. It could not be postponed. No one else could replace him. Q-Tip had to appear wearing a ski mask that covered his entire face. Fans thought it was a stylistic choice, a 90s hip-hop aesthetic. But the truth was, makeup could not hide the injury, and cameras could not film a shattered face. That fight became Q-Tip's harshest lesson in 90s. Hip-hop, the most famous one, is the first one to get hit. And in 90s, hip-hop, one misunderstanding could make an artist bleed. But the cruelest part is this: that was not even the hardest hit he took. Q-Tip's facial injury came at the exact moment Hollywood was opening its doors to him. Director John Singleton, who had skyrocketed to fame with Boys in the Hood, had chosen Q-Tip for the lead role of Lucky in Poetic Justice opposite Janet Jackson. This role could have launched Q-Tip into the new generation of black movie stars. But his face could not appear on screen. Swollen left cheek, blurred left eye, unhealed wounds. The film crew could not wait. John Singleton had to choose someone else. And that someone was Tupac Shakur. Tupac did not just play Lucky, he embodied him. He exploded on screen. He turned Lucky into an iconic character and opened a brilliant acting career the world still talks about. And Q-Tip from lead role, he was pushed down to a tiny supporting part Markel, who appears in the first minutes and dies in the opening scene. A consolation role, like a gentle message from Hollywood. You were supposed to be there, but now you are not. It stole from him the chance to become an A-list movie star beside Janet Jackson. And the biggest question hanging over history is, what if Q-Tip had not been attacked that night? What if his face had not swollen? What if Phife Dawg had stepped up and owned the line from the start? Would Q-Tip's place in Hollywood today be on a completely different level? No one knows. But perhaps the bigger question everyone wonders is, after that fight, was Q-Tip and Phife Dawg's friendship still intact, or had it cracked? Let us move to the next part to find the answer. 4. A 44-year friendship shattered. Everyone knows how beautiful the friendship between Q-Tip and Phife Dawg once was. Two kids barely 2 years old sharing meals, sharing cassette tapes, sharing dreams. But nothing is eternal. If one had to describe the nature of that fracture, it was the tragedy of the king and the general. Q-Tip was the brain, the strategist, the creator of the sound that made A Tribe Called Quest immortal. Phife was the warrior, the fire, the irreplaceable street essence. They complemented each other perfectly until the balance of power between them collapsed. Over the years, Q-Tip became perfectionist to an extreme. He controlled the beats, controlled the flow, controlled the direction of the entire group. He decided what they wore, what they rapped, what contracts they signed. And in Phife's eyes, someone who had been a co-founder. The other half of the group's soul, Q-Tip, was no longer a brother. He became a boss, a true artistic dictator, a control freak through and through. Phife felt he was being treated like an employee in his own group. In many interviews, he said Q-Tip and the label Jive had thrown him under the bus, intentionally shrinking his presence in the eyes of the public. Things became worse when Phife read an interview in Spin, where Q-Tip said he had no problem with Phife, and that Phife is just jealous of me. That sentence was like a knife driven straight into the pride of the friend who had walked with him for life. And that 1993 incident dealt Q-Tip a devastating blow on behalf of Phife. Q-Tip was the one who lost the chance to become an A-list movie star in Poetic Justice. And the most painful part, many sources revealed that Phife did not step forward to clarify, nor did he apologize. Q-Tip did not blame him. He was noble enough to let it go. But the wound never disappeared. But the real final straw was the arrival of rapper Consequence, Q-Tip's cousin. Without asking anyone, Q-Tip brought Consequence into Tribe and let him rap so much that he overshadowed Phife's space entirely. For an artist who already felt minimized within the very group he helped build, this was not just disrespect, it was a fatal blow. Phife felt Q-Tip wanted to turn Tribe into Q-Tip and his friends. And from there, the friendship began tearing apart piece by piece. When Tribe reunited for a tour in 2008, everyone thought time had healed things. But Mountain View, California proved the opposite. A furious argument erupted backstage. Phife shouted, "Fuck, you Kamal," using Q-Tip's Islamic name. Q-Tip, angered, shoved Phife hard in the back of the neck, making him stumble. Phife called it the most disrespectful thing a friend could ever do. The friendship was destroyed beyond repair. No return, no reconciliation. Only before Phife passed away in 2016 did they truly speak again as brothers. But the lingering question was, what for everything was too late? Everything was only memories. And as that door closed, Q-Tip believed the storms had finally passed. But hip-hop and the industry itself still had one more blow waiting for him. 5. The industry trap. There is a truth very few outsiders understand. An artist can survive scandals, survive beef, survive street altercations. But when their art is buried alive, that is the blow that silences a genius for real. Q-Tip knew this better than anyone, because the greatest tragedy of his life did not come from Rex-Neffect or the internal war with Phife. It came from the cold closed doors of the music industry. After Tribe broke up and the emotional wounds slowly faded, Q-Tip entered a new chapter. A chapter where he believed he could finally tell his own story. Free from anyone's demands, no longer forced to balance between jazz spirit and the pressure of commercial success. He wanted to make a different album, one no one could confine. And that was when he began creating Kamal the Abstract, a project unlike anything the mainstream could imagine at the time. An album full of jazz breath mixed with electronic funk spoken word with a structure that tore apart every pop rap standard. It was very Q-Tip, but also too Q-Tip. He sent the album to Arista, believing it would become another creative turning point like the low-end theory. But Arista froze. They did not know what to do with music that existed outside the market's borders. They did not hear the future within the layers of saxophone and unconventional drums. They heard one thing: it will not sell. And with one sentence cold as steel, too hard to market. The entire album was locked away, sealed in storage as if it never existed. No concert, no marketing, no release date. Not even one chance for the world to hear what Q-Tip had created. A genius pushed aside simply for being ahead of his time. People said Q-Tip became unusually quiet during those days. He did not explode, did not break things, did not go on MTV to accuse the label. Q-Tip just went silent. A silence heavy as metal. The silence of someone who tried everything, but was blocked by something invisible and absolute, the power of gatekeeping. Then he began a new album this time, called Open. A soul-heavy project lighter than Kamal, but still experimental. But when he finally found a new home, DreamWorks Records, the label collapsed. Collapsed instantly. Collapsed as if the moment he laid the first brick, the whole building fell apart. And Open was shelved indefinitely. 2 consecutive albums locked away. 2 creative children he poured his heart into, both paused forever by the industry. For the general public, this created a cruel illusion. They thought Q-Tip disappeared. They thought he was washed up. They thought he stopped creating. But the truth was the opposite. He was still creating. He was creating so far ahead that the market did not know what to do with him. Those years were the strangest void in Q-Tip's career. In interviews, many described him as someone who branched off from the main timeline, entering a creative dimension the industry could not follow. While rap was shifting toward explosive club hits when 50 Cent, Ludacris, and Nelly defined hot, Q-Tip's music had complex structures, multiple layers difficult to grasp. He was like a sculptor working with light in a room where everyone else only knew how to touch stone. Being ahead too early is a form of tragedy. People applaud you if you innovate at the right time, but if you innovate 5 years early, you receive rejection. And Q-Tip fell exactly into that void between what he wanted to create and what the industry allowed artists to express. When the mainstream door closed, not only were his works locked away, he himself was locked into silence. People saw him less. He performed less, released almost no solo music. The world thought he was asleep. Those who understood him knew an artist never sleeps. They are only locked where the audience cannot see. If the eye injury of 1993 was the punch to his body, then the burial of 2 albums was the punch to his heart. It made him retreat inward, more cautious, quieter, more introspective. Some friends said Q-Tip would sit for hours in the studio tinkering with a repeating drum loop as if trying to reconnect a creative circuit cut in half. He did not speak much, did not explain much, just continued making music no one could hear. An artist's pain is not in being criticized, it is in being denied the microphone. And during that period, the industry took from Q-Tip his right to speak, his right to let the world know what he was creating, his right for history to hear a new chapter of him. But the most frightening truth is this: when an artist disappears from the mainstream, that void never stays empty. It quickly fills with rumors, whispers, and scraps of trouble fans pass quietly among themselves. And that is when the small scandals, harmless at first, began clinging to Q-Tip like unwanted shadows. Stories of a temper, minor legal scuffles, imperfect moments began circulating as if once the industry buried his art life, decided to test him again. Within that silence, one truth became clear. Sometimes the greatest enemy of a genius is not another person. It is timing. And just as he was struggling to climb out of the grave, the industry had unknowingly dug for him. New quiet scandals began knocking on the door. 6. The moral shadows. When people look at Q-Tip, they often see a calm genius. A gentle genius with no criminal record, no addictions, no bankruptcy, no tax scandals like many of his peers. But that is only the surface, because beneath that clean light are small scratches, impulsive moments that slightly crack his perfect image like a thin line on a mirror that only careful observers can detect. The first story happened in a moment that seemed harmless. Paparazzi pushing flashlights, exploding chaotic voices, calling his name like a storm. Q-Tip was never the confrontational type, but that day, he lost patience. One shove, one step over the barrier, and police immediately recorded it as disorderly conduct. It was not a major case. No one was injured, no long court proceedings. But it was enough for the public to see Q-Tip a little differently enough to break the illusion that he was always calm under pressure. Then came the second issue, more complicated, involving Kenrick Miranda. A heated dispute, sharp words, and an uncontrolled physical clash led to Q-Tip being charged with third-degree assault. No jail, no explosive trial. But it was no longer the image of an absolutely untarnished Q-Tip. The incident was like a faint ink stain on white paper light, but difficult to erase. It did not stop there. A heavier shadow came from his own music. The song Georgie Porgy was considered to contain homophobic implications, forcing Q-Tip to face moral criticism and cultural sensitivity debates for the first time. In an era when every lyric could become a blade, one line was enough to ignite fierce argument. Q-Tip had no intention to hurt anyone. But the public reaction showed him that even geniuses can be wrong, can be pulled down to earth by their own words. And when we piece together all these fragments, what do we see? We see a Q-Tip far more complex than the gentle musical master people imagine. We see a human being with real emotions, real limits, real moments of anger, like anyone else. A genius who can still act impulsively. A man holding both light and darkness within himself. But the most surprising part, the biggest plot twist, does not lie in these scandals. It lies in how Q-Tip rose after all of them, in the person he became when the storm quieted. And that final chapter is the one that made the world stop and stare. 7. The Quiet Legacy. After all the chaos of an era where violence often spoke before art, Q-Tip stepped into the second half of his life. With a choice no one expected: silence. Not the silence of someone who gave up, but the silence of someone who had seen both light and darkness, who had lived through peaks and valleys, and realized that sometimes the loudest noise is the noise of maturity. From a Harlem kid obsessed with jazz, from the misfit genius of Tribe, from the victim of punches, meant for someone else, Q-Tip entered middle age. With a different spirit awakened calm and deeper than ever. He no longer wanted to chase charts, no longer wanted to appear in new beefs, no longer wanted to prove himself with money force or ego. Instead, Q-Tip chose to stand behind the spotlight, lifting up new generations with knowledge and experience. And that is why he became artistic director of the Kennedy Center, a position once reserved for conductors, professors, and cultural giants of America. A rapper, a producer from Queens, a man who was once beaten outside the Apollo Theater now stood in such a prestigious place. It was not just a career achievement, it was a message that hip-hop had intellect, culture, and depth. Q-Tip became the bridge between the streets and high art. Not only that, he taught at NYU, passing on sonic thinking aesthetics and avant-garde spirit to young people entering the industry. His voice, soft, low, steady, like an old vinyl rhythm, became a kind of mentor energy many sought. There is something unusual about Q-Tip. He is distant, yet close. A teacher, yet an older brother who rarely speaks, but understands everything. People attended his classes not only to learn beat making, but to learn how to be human in an industry that demands you scream to survive. In his personal life, Q-Tip returned to his true nature. Living plant-based, meditating, eating with discipline. No alcohol, no stimulants. He avoided beefs, avoided drama, avoided the verbal battles that had dragged countless artists down. A Q-Tip who once navigated explosive years, who witnessed friends consumed by violence and the seduction of fame, now chose a life few could see. A life where peace mattered more than spotlight. But Q-Tip's greatest legacy does not lie in that silence. It lies in the music he left behind. Especially the final album of A Tribe called Quest We Got It From Here. Thank you for your service. An album like a farewell letter. A thank you note to Phife Dawg, the friend he met at age 2. The friend who once ignited trouble that nearly cost Q-Tip his career. The friend he argued with, separated from, but always kept in his heart as family. Q-Tip recorded this album after Phife had passed away, yet Phife's voice remained in it as if he were standing beside Q-Tip in the studio. And it was Q-Tip who arranged every line, every beat, every emotion, shaping that final album into the purest legacy Tribe ever produced. When the album was released, people were not just listening to music, they were listening to a goodbye, a quiet sob hidden in the layers of harmony, a long journey closing in serenity. And in that moment, people realized Q-Tip did not need to shout to exist, did not need shock value to be remembered. He existed through depth, something the chaotic era of hip-hop often overlooked.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.